but the majority of them are actually asymptomatic. So they should be okay.
Interesting. Good morning, Jags. How are you doing? You got to unmute yourself, Jags.
Yep. I just realized that, yeah, it's good that the technology tells me that I got to unmute when it hears me. Yeah. How are you guys doing?
Good. Excellent.
Nice.
So we were discussing COVID, and by the way, we are live now so that we can have the attendees coming in, but we can still chit chat for a minute or so that people can join in. We were
Yep.
discussing COVID in Ohio and Ahmedabad, and I personally have not been following news. I'm on news diet from last 27 days. I have to finish 30 days because no news is good news.
True.
So
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think it's just not the no news part, but also, the news is also being so polarized. It's not anymore, just taking the facts from both sides and presenting it to for the people to look at the merits and the demerits. It's like a judgment. Every news channel is giving their own judgment. So yeah, I mean, I don't blame you.
that's called media judgments. So media trial. So,
Right.
so that's all over the world. I think media give the trial and they also give you a judgment. They also sentence you.
That's true.
All right, I think we can begin because we already 2 minutes past 8:30, which is 11 a.m. EST. So let me introduce all of you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for coming over this morning. Really appreciate your time. We're gonna have some great discussions in next 60 to 75 minutes. We understand Jesal has a hard stop in about 60 minutes, so we let him go in 60 minutes, guys. We'll continue for 10 more minutes with Susan and with Jags. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Let me introduce Susan first, the woman on the panel. Susan, I know Susan from 8-9 years now. Susan was a teacher of chemistry after graduating in chemistry, and she then went ahead and studied law. I'll ask her why she went ahead and studied law, and from teacher, she became a patent attorney. Susan has worked in a couple of law firms and now she's a partner in Fisher Boyles. She primarily handles patent work in the domains of chemistry and mechanical. And Susan enjoys many seminars to teach clients about IP. Susan, thank you so much. Thank you very much for coming up this morning and accepting the invite. Thank you so much. Uh, Moving on to Jesal. Jesal Mehta is an entrepreneur, CEO, and startup advisor. He has spent almost a decade and a half in the Bay Area in the Silicon Valley, and now he is back in his country, and he lives in Ahmedabad now. And in the past, he has had the experience of starting and exiting a few ventures. He has been building teams in the procure to pay space, and also currently he's managing a company which focuses on contract management, legal contract management. His focus areas are scaling organizations from ground zero to level 0 to level 10. He focuses on SaaS, software as a service, and his passion is finance and operations. Thank you very much, Jesal, for coming and accepting this invite and sharing your views today. Jagadish Gattu, or Jags, as we can call him. Jags is an IIT Madras alumni. He went. I was looking at his profile and I was amazed. He got 3.8 out of 4 CGPA. Then he did his MS again. 4 out of 4 credits. Again, the next education 4 out of 4 there as well. So he has been, I'm sure, one of the top students across his life. I would like to understand your secret when we talk more. How do you score always the best marks in your class? Jags is a passionate entrepreneur. He has over 15 years of experience. He developed 4 ideas and he believes in a philosophy called fail cheap, fail fast. I would like to understand from you, how do you implement during our discussion? He built 4 products from idea to launch, and those 4 products earned his companies a revenue of almost $150 million. He specializes in all technologies, I would say, from machine learning to AI to IoT to industrial IoT to predictive analysis and energy. He is all over the technology landscape. Thank you so much, Jax, for coming over this morning. Really appreciate your time. Now, I will ask, and let me introduce myself. You should know who you are talking to. Who's this guy asking questions to you? So my name is Amit Koshal. I'm a founder of a law firm in India called Photon Legal. We primarily focus on IP, patent, trademark, design, and other stuff. I started my career with Motorola as an in-house patent counsel in Motorola. And moving on, I spent a few years in some law firms in Delhi, and now I run my own law firm in Pune. That's about me. Okay, I can let go this paper. Susan, why would you transition from being a teacher to a patent lawyer?
Well, after 8 years of teaching the same textbook, the same labs, I had a Thanksgiving dinner with my family, and they were asking how teaching is going. And I kind of expressed that I was getting a little bored doing the same thing year after year. And my oldest sibling is a patent attorney. And he looked at me and said, "You need to go to law school." So I took a year off from teaching, finished my bachelor's of chemistry, and applied to law school in that year, and then ended up going and doing it. I've now been practicing for over 13 years.
Excellent, excellent. So how rare or how often does it happen that you listen to your sibling? I think the last person listened to is your sibling.
I've got a really good relationship with my 3 older brothers. So yeah, the oldest one in particular always has good advice.
All right, I'm glad you could listen to him. So as a patent attorney, how were the last 6 months for you?
Going through COVID for me has really been no change, because I have been at Fisher Broyles for 3 years. Fisher Broyles is a cloud-based law firm, and in order to give our clients reduced hourly rates, we did away with all the overhead. We don't have buildings. We don't have the huge construct of the staff doing all of the things that they do inside of a large law firm. So the majority of us work from home. If you would like to have office space, that's your choice. But I have an office at my home, and I've been working this way remote, like I say, for 3 years. So it didn't interrupt my business at all. And in fact, the clients have realized that during this economic change, innovation is important. And they've continued their innovation. And so the work is still coming into me just like it was before.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you very much. Thank you for setting the context for the discussion. Jesal, tell us something about last 5 months of your business.
So when this COVID hit us, I was actually in Australia and for doing some event there, and we had to rush back. But interesting part was the change was more up in head than actual in reality. I actually planned to hire the sales team in Australia and in US. I kind of put immediately on hold. And I said, okay, now let's go into the shell. Things are going to slow down because this is such a major pandemic. And as it turned out, none of those fears turned out to be true. In fact, we saw an uptick in activities, especially in our product like contract management and the whole source to pay. Automation, especially people working from home, the workflows became very important. Machine learning, artificial intelligence driven workflows, the processing became more important because everybody was working from home. So it actually, it increased the activity. So as I said, we kind of went into our shell for a couple of months, just fearing what's going to happen. So I would say we lost initial 2-3 months out of just fear. If I had to do it all over again, that's such a learning for me. But since then, I think things are actually better. If you probably, it's not us, pretty much every SaaS company is actually doing phenomenally well, public and the private online. So it's been, I think, only major challenges. I'm more of a people person. I like to interact with people, especially the team members. That part I'm missing. Sitting in at home and doing only Zoom calls has been a little tough. So doing selling over Zoom is a little challenging. Not to say it's impossible, but that's kind of just a change, and it's more a personal thing than actually any other impact on the business.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. We will ask you more questions about the previous ventures and your startups and funding and all of that in a bit. Let me jump to Jags. Jags, thank you so much for coming over. Tell us something about your business in the last 5-6 months.
Yeah, so I agree with Jesal. I think, most of the impact has been on businesses which require like in-person activity, like very high touch. For most of the digital companies, it has maybe in many cases it has actually boosted the activity. For us, we are offering a plant monitoring solution, which is a AI-based plant monitoring solution for process industries. So once again, the software, the SaaS software that we offer helps the companies, helps all these plants operate or monitor what is going on without, the risk of actually failing these apart, or equipment failures or efficiency losses. So for us, it hasn't necessarily decreased the activity. It was business as usual. The thing that got impacted is the closings, right? The PO issuance process, because of the fact that whenever there is uncertainty in the market, companies tend to hold on to their cash, just like every company. So we did see that, in terms of closing, the first 3 months were sort of slow, but otherwise, I think, it is business as usual for us. Yeah. And one more point I want to mention here is that, see, there are also, positive things for startups, because, when you look at large companies, right? Large companies have a major sales force, and they can actually reach out, they can fly, they can meet people. Whereas, for a startup now, the playing field is sort of, leveled, because, everybody is doing the remote, sales process, right? That is a good part. And also the other part is there's a lot of talent out there right now. So like Jesal, we're hiring significantly as well. And, whether it is data science or software engineering or application engineering, I think, we do see great talent out there. So it's a good time to hire.
So it's a good time to hire because people are getting fired?
Well, I guess, there's also the youngsters who are graduating, right? So it's both, people who are probably getting out of work, as well as, people who are getting out of colleges.
So, we have a very lucky panel here. None of your businesses got impacted, which is very rare, because all the sessions that I've been doing the last few weeks, we had mixed bag. People had great losses. Somebody were reacting, somebody were responding. I'm sure in your lives as well, Susan, I'm sure, let's say some of your clients might not be doing well. There's a possibility some of the businesses have gone down. Are they reacting? Are they responding? What are you advising to them?
What I've seen for one client that is in the liquid crystal chemical market, they make a lot of temperature sensor products. So they switched and made a lot more thermometer-based products to respond to COVID, which helped keep their business at the level it was, just shifted product. Another thing that client did, they outsourced some of their software development team because they weren't doing their current product that required the software. So they sold some of those services to someone else who made another product relative to COVID. That company was making badges that people could wear that would sense and tell if you're far enough away from someone. So social distancing application. So they were being innovative in changing where their folks were being used and what products they were making. Another client is in the automotive industry, and automotive sales have declined a little bit during COVID. So they responded differently, being a big company They cut some of their staff. They reduced their engineering team a bit. So they did some cost-cutting measures by doing reductions.
Mhm. The last news I read was that US lost almost 30 million jobs. Uh, how is that impacting you or your clients?
I've not seen any direct correlation other than the large company that did the reductions. So for instance, where it affected me, they did cut their in-house IP counsel and shifted that responsibility partially to their general counsel and partially to the head of engineering. But they were also doing some global restructuring because they have businesses in China, India, Brazil, so and Europe in particular. So they were shifting that IP responsibility to try to harmonize globally to get their product development and management streamlined. So that's been interesting, but it's not the first time that's happened. It seems like about every 7 years that recycles and they reshift who's in charge. So I've been through it before.
I'm sure. Some of the learnings from Susan are that pivot very fast, adapt to things, find opportunity and pivot and see where you can outsource, where you can start making things which are more relevant today. Pivoting is very, very, very important. Thank you very much, Susan, for that input. Jesal, you spoke about that you focus a lot on scaling. How do you scale organizations from level 0 to level 10? What are the biggest challenges do you face while you help somebody scale, and how do you resolve them?
So in our business, with Jags and I, and to an extent Susan as well, right? I mean, we are on all knowledge economy. We need knowledge workers. So our business scaling of that, on one hand, is somebody buying our products. On the other hand, getting the team ready to really deliver to what the customers are looking for. So usually sales, if there's a demand, you always can translate into that. Our challenge usually in what I've seen is what Jax was referring to was getting the right talent and really scaling that to from 10 people or $10 million to $100 million. Because in my previous life, my organization grew from less than 10 million to $220 million over a span of 6 years. And I was challenged to grow that, scale that organization, which was primarily the back office, all engineering, professional services, customer support, technical writing, and so on and so forth. That's usually the biggest challenge, right? I think what worked for us, and I mean, a couple of times I have done that, so I think I would say that it would work reasonably well, is you hire keeping the right attitude in mind and not hire for that role. Because in a scaling environment, your role is going to evolve very fast. So if you hire the right people with the right attitude who can adapt to the new role, the changing role, you've got to really hire for that. For example, I hired a head of support in my earlier job. When I hired him, it was like, I hired him to lead 9 people organization. And 9 months later, he was leading 30 people organization. So that's a big change for him, right? So that's kind of somebody who can adapt and can evolve is what you need to look for. So the biggest learning for me is hiring and then invest heavily upfront on the training part. Training and enablement should be the key focus, especially when you're hiring people for attitude. You're not actually looking for the exact fit for those roles. That means you need to really train them formally to get into that role. So investment in that and hiring the right people is what I think I have.
Excellent.
For me.
A great learning, Jesal. I think one of the things that we have also been learning in the last few months and years, especially, we should hire based upon values and not based upon capabilities. For example, we should look what values we have, what values we possess. And then based upon that, we hire the person with the same values. For example, in Photon Legal, when we hire somebody, we look for whether that person has hunger for achievement, whether the person is obsessive about adding value to the customer, whether the person has enthusiasm, energy, he's positive, he's solution finder, he is He will never say no. He's a go-getter. So these are the values a person has. And if you have the right values, patent drafting or prosecution or trademark are capabilities. Give these capabilities to somebody and the person flies, because the guy with right value will hold the capabilities and can fly very soon. So I learned this very late in my career. I learned this around 8 months back. It was not 5 years back. I learned this 8 years back, 8 months back. And before that, I always used to hire based on capability, and I had a good team, but not an exceptional team. So that's one learning, and you confirmed it today. Thank you very much for the confirmation.
When we used to do that training for all the interviewers, scaling, we had to train our interviewers how to interview. And it used to be my mantra that you're looking for three things in a candidate: attitude, attitude, and attitude. That's what we are looking for. If there's one, I mean, I can compromise on somebody not knowing a technology or a little softer on that part, but I'm not going to compromise on this.
Absolutely. And the second thing about scaling that we learned is the biggest bottleneck in our companies is us, which means the founders. The founders of the company want to be all over. They want to be there, here, everywhere. And that's where the biggest bottleneck is us. If we remove ourselves from the equation, the company runs smoothly. And they say, I think Henry Ford said, the smartest people in the room hire the people who are smarter than them. So if you're hiring people who are smarter than you, you can let them do their job and you can just trust them because you hired them. Try to trust them and let them do it, and your company will be able to scale. Those are some of the learnings those are my 2 cents. Jesal, Jagadish, Jags, what's your take on that? Scaling.
Yeah, I think
all these things.
Go ahead. Yeah, so I agree with both of you guys. I think you covered pretty much it. You know, when we look at hiring, I completely agree that we don't look at the exact match on the skill sets. What we look for is aptitude, attitude, and smarts, right? I think one of the key aspects, just to add on top of what you said, one of the key aspects is you got to make sure that the person is someone who enjoys the startup environment. That is very important because there might be people who come from maybe a Samsung or maybe a Microsoft or a Google, right? And the environment or the experience working in a major, like a Fortune 500 company and a startup is very different, right? Like you said, all the aspects of energy, enthusiasm, go-getter, the interest to learn, right? All these are extremely important in a startup, and also the evolution, right? As we are going through as the company is building. So I think, we do look for, on top of what you said, we make sure that this candidate is someone who would enjoy the startup, right? And the second part, which is very interesting that you mentioned about, the need for the founders to remove themselves, right? Trust me, I mean, for founders who don't do that, it's going to be really, really complicated and challenging for them to run the organization. And you will see that all the time, because the first part is just getting your customers, which is the sales part, which maybe, you can do yourself to a certain extent initially. But then, after that, when you start executing it, there's no way that the founder or, the co-founders are going to be able to just execute it by themselves. So, and that's where I think, adding up what Jesal said, which is the training part, is extremely important to make sure that they are provided, they're getting the enablement, and then, you can actually start scaling the organization. Yeah.
Excellent. So Jax, what? Being a startup looks very cool. A lot of companies are 5-year-old, 10-year-old companies. They're calling themselves startups.
Right.
When should somebody cease to call themselves a startup?
Yeah, so see, I think the way I look at a successful startup, right, is you have a unique insight, right, that is defensible and that has a broad application, market application, which is, translating market size. And then you're able to take that idea or solution and generate revenue at a fast pace, right? Which makes it also fundable. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can open any, just a regular shop, or, like have a business which is a low growth, steady state, income generator, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But typically when you look at a company like a successful startup which actually scales, right, then you are also looking at, how fast it is growing. Now, in deep tech world, there are companies which do take longer to kind of incubate and get to a point where they can take off, right? But typically, companies, I would say maybe 2 to 3 years, or maybe 3 to 4 years if it is really deep tech. But I think, I would say beyond 5 years or beyond 3 years, I don't think you can really call it's just my personal opinion, right? There's no right or wrong in this one, but I think beyond 5 years, it's a bit, the Indian government definition, I think they have extended it to now 10 years and 100 crores, right? So, which is crazy.
So can I chime in here? And this is an excellent question. The way I look at this is startup is a frame of mind. It's really challenging to really define that by the number of years or the size of the revenue and so on and so forth. The reason being, I have seen a lot of large organizations building startups within, right? So there's a concept of entrepreneurship, which is what you are trying to entrepreneur within that organization and build something. So for me, startup is something that you are ready to disrupt a market, trying to be nimble and have a growth mindset. So if these 3 check boxes are checked, then you are potentially a startup in that sense. Now, to Jack's point, the reality is when you reach to that 5-year mark, when you have couple of hundred, depending on the type of business environment you are in, you have those kind of customers, you are so busy in the daily grind that you lose track of what your real fabric is, what your real innovation, disruption that you actually got into. And then you become that large size company because now it's an income generating machine for you. So you kind of mindset changes at that point. And so that's kind of how I look at it. If I need to be young, if I need to be a startup, I need to really keep that mindset on for a longer duration of time.
Interesting.
Yeah, I also want to add one quick point. I think, see, a lot of startups, right? It's an uncertain journey. It's an exciting, but it is an uncertain journey, and people do pivot, right? It's not that. I think what we need to look at is whether the idea that they are working on, or the new idea that they're working on, whether they are learning new things and they're pivoting and they're continuing to do. I know some of my very close friends, who have essentially been in the startup space. They have started a couple of companies, they iterated on those. Some of them didn't work, but then they're starting something else, right? So I think as long as you're pivoting, you're learning, and you're kind of moving to make it work, it's still great. But once you get like 100 customers, 100 crore revenue, I don't think it's a startup.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Susan, since we have been talking a lot of startups, what should be an IP strategy for a startup?
Well, for a startup, it's going to depend. Yeah, there's that lawyer answer, right? It depends. and I will give my disclaimer now.
Yes.
I am a patent attorney that works with Photon Legal on U.S. patent prosecution matters. Even though we're talking about the law, nothing said today is legal advice. And no attorney-client privilege relationship is established between us. Rather, I consider all questions to be hypothetical.
Yes.
Okay, I did my duty.
I agree.
For startups, it's going to depend upon the technology area they're in, how much money they have available, because the patent process is not cheap. I highly encourage provisional filings. Provisional patents are cheaper as far as the government fee, but they're only good for 1 year. And then it gives you time during that 1 year to test your product, get your prototypes made, figure out how you're going to get to market. So it gives you time, or maybe to do fundraising. So I think that 1 year of time is valuable. And then you can make your decision as to whether it's going to work and you want to file your actual utility patent application that is then going to get examined. So I've had clients that their motto is file often, file quick. So we can file multiple provisional applications if your technology evolves, say in 3 months. All of a sudden there's a major shift in that technology. We can file another provisional, and at the anniversary of the 1 year of the first one, we combine 3, 4 provisionals into one application. So that way you don't lose some time or your priority, but yet it's flexible and allows you to add content. A lot of companies have gone straight in with their utility filing and then realize something changes in the product, but that content is locked once you file utility. So then you end up filing a second utility, and now your cost is really going to escalate because utility filings have significant government fees, and if both grant into patents, now you've got maintenance fees on both of them over their full 20-year term. So sometimes it's unavoidable to get multiple patents, and that's not a bad thing. But if you can combine it and keep it in one, it's more cost effective over the long run.
That was advice. One more thing I want to ask you is that we have a client in India. They're from IIT Bombay, and they're trying to replace gensets, generators, diesel operated generators with lithium-ion batteries. So in India, a lot of our marriages and a lot of our social functions run on generators, diesel power generators. They're trying to replace the generators with lithium-ion batteries. You can just port these batteries, and you can just use, instead of a generator, you can use this lithium-ion pack for the electricity in that particular function. They have been funded. So funded startups like these, how much should they allocate for IP? What should be their IP budget?
Well, that's kind of tough because it depends on how many countries they envision going into. If they're going to stay in one country, for instance, the US, I've had patents that 20,000 would cover the entire 20 years. I've had some where prosecution has been difficult, especially in the chemical field. Getting a patent through the patent office seems to take longer. It's a bigger fight with the examiners to say that it is non-obvious. So it might be 30 or 40,000 to get through its full 20 years. But the client that I represent that does automotive parts, they have a standard 6 foreign countries plus the US that they file in. We budget $125,000 for the life of those 7 patents. So once you start foreign filing, it just multiplies. It's exponential cost. So the guidance I usually give is to consider several factors. How much of the market do you want to cover? Are you satisfied with covering 80% of the market with your foreign filings? 70% of the market? You have to evaluate that balanced against where do you make and manufacture? Where do your clients make, manufacture, sell? Where do you sell? So you balance all of those factors to decide what countries are most important. And then we can give you a cost estimate of what that looks like. But from experience, 7 countries, about $125,000 for a 20-year life of all the patents.
Excellent. That's good piece of advice. Thank you so much, Susan. Jagadish, you have been focusing on a principle called fail cheap, fail fast. How do you actually implement this? When should somebody know it's time to exit? No more experimenting.
Yeah. So, I've always enjoyed the nexus of the technology and the business. And, I spent half my career doing, hands-on analytics, and then, I decided that I want to move from technology into the business side. So then I moved into the commercial roles and started, building ideas to businesses. Now, one of the challenges with ideas to business, right? It is the uncertainty. I mean, it's kind of like a startup, right? Every time you pick up an idea, it's just an idea. There are a lot of assumptions that are part of the process to actually make a successful business. As I said, one, you need to have a unique insight. Second, you need to have, you need to be able to defend it. Then you need to actually have a sizable market. And then you need to be able to execute it, right? And scale the business. Now, when you start, the first thing is the product market fit. I mean, you want to make sure that what the idea that you have and what problem it is solving, it is actually real. And so what we've always focused on is initially you talk to, I think, one of the common mistakes that people do is you have an idea and you internally, discuss it or have a, lot of dialogue about it. But then the most important part is you have an idea, or let's say you're selling toys to a kid, kids, right? The most important part is you need to essentially talk to the customers, so in this case, probably the parents who are the buyers and then the kids who are actually the users, right? You need to be in front of the customer. You need to essentially validate your product or your idea in the first place, right? And then you need to start looking at, the aspect of the market size and then, market size as well as your business model, right? But the key aspect is what we have always done is whenever we look at an idea, every idea is different, and some of them, you have to look at all the assumptions that you're looking at, and then you have to rank those, or you have to think about, which assumptions are the major big assumptions, right? So, for example, if you're thinking that I'm going to make a drug or vaccine for COVID, right? The major assumption is whether you have the formula or not, right? Because that people are going to buy it if it works, right? So you got to identify what are your major assumptions and major risks, and then you got to do experiments, whether it is talking to customers or whether it is essentially looking at what your technology profile looks like to validate those, and then oftentimes you will find that some things might not work. I'll give you an example. So I worked on an idea where, in petrochemical plants and refineries, right, there are essential regulations around how much methane is emitted into the atmosphere. The government regulates, EPA regulates, how much you do. So when we, there was an idea that today, I mean, many of the people actually go in and they monitor them manually, right? They go to every flange or valve and they check whether it is leaking or not, right? And so one of the ideas that came up was, this is a very manual effort, how about we just put in a sensor that measures continuously and lets you know. I mean, you don't need the manual measurements, right? It sounded like a great, idea. And then, we went ahead, we talked to customers, we built a prototype. But what we realized as we went to conferences, we talked to customers, stuff, right? There is a huge aspect of regulation. Customers were afraid that if you put in the online measurement, right, today, if you exceed the limit, you get penalized, right? And it is required for you to report those measurements. So when you put in an online measurement, yes, it makes the life simpler. You're probably saving money on the manual measurements, but then now your measurement has to be reported to the government, and the government might say, instead of you measuring it every 3 months, now you're measuring it every day or every minute. So the government might say, hey, I mean, you're actually exceeding it every day, and the penalties might be higher, right? So you see, I mean, that is not a non-trivial assumption, right? Non-trivial issue. So you got to break into it, and one of the key metrics about validating it is when you get the money from the customer. When they say, yes, this is a great idea, I mean, you take it take it with a pinch of salt, but when they are actually able to put some money on it, then you will see, then that, your assumptions are validated.
That's a great example that you took, Jagadish. It makes a lot of sense. Uh, Jesal, extending Jag's point, he talks about data and market need and ideas. You have a market need, you have customers or paying customers. What about passion? A lot of people start businesses because they have passion for something. There's a passion for nutrition, passion for whatever, clothes for. I was interviewing a candidate, somebody, and she had a passion for women who were expecting. When she was expecting a child, she was not able to get the right dresses and apparel for her office. So she had a passion to serve women who were expecting mothers. So she started her business because she could not find it when she was expecting, and because of her passion, she is catering to this expecting woman needs. Pure passion. Forget about data, and she's doing very well. What do you tell? What would you tell such entrepreneurs who are purely driven by passion and they're doing well?
So passion is two things, right? So passion for the given market, given audience, versus just passion for business or passion for entrepreneurship, right? There are two different things. Now, just passion is not enough. You need to really know if you have passion. Let's say I'm a sports enthusiast and I have passion for it, but can I identify the problem there? Right? Because it's very key that you need to be able to identify the problem in order to actually build a business out of that.
But when you have passion, aren't you able to identify problems and solve them as well? Because you have so much passion to create problems and solve them as well.
Yeah, potentially, if you have that depth of that passion and the enthusiasm for that, hell yeah, I mean, you should do that. I don't think anybody can actually stop you that. And then at that point, your passion becomes your career. Your passion becomes your life journey. So nothing wrong with that. But I'll just tweak that question a little bit. Passion in general, right? At times, passion for building an organization, for building something new, it's like, because building an organization, creating a company is like a baby. You're raising a baby, right? It's your own baby. There is the reason to build that just for that passion, because I like building. I like creating some new stuff. It could be new product, new company, and new ideas, right? And passion for that also counts. But if I just kind of simplify that, yes, passion certainly helps. And I would say, if you don't have passion for any of these things, whether just for the business or for that particular domain, you should think twice before coming in, because this is a long and painful journey. Let's put it that way, right? It is a long marathon, and first few years is going to be like hell. And you guys said, did I do the right thing? Of leaving the well-paying job that I actually had, right? So at that time, that passion is going to be useful to you. Okay, no, because I love it, because I enjoy that, and that's what is going to keep you going.
Excellent, excellent. So Jack is smiling. He could relate to some of the things that you're saying. Anyways, yeah. One more thing, Jesal, you in your past you have raised a lot of funds for your previous companies. Why should somebody not raise funds from external investors?
So let me just clarify. I did not raise fund for the previous company. I raised fund for this company. I was not directly involved in raising the fund in my previous company, but this company, yes. Why should they not? And yeah, you had warned me that you're going to put us on spot. So here's an example on that. I guess it's always looking for funding. It to a large extent is about, yes, money is one thing that helps, that keeps you going. But along with that, you are getting partners, somebody who is going to watch over you, whether you like it or not. Because now their horse is the race. So they would rather will be focusing on that. Do you like that? Do you want that? Then you should. For example, in my case, I'm a solo entrepreneur. And it's a very lonely job. You don't have a lot of people to expert, to kind of brainstorm with, talk to, get ideas, because a lot of those ideas actually come from brainstorming. At that point, having an experienced investor on your side whom you can go and get some advice, or actually pick up the phone and talk at any random hour, is very, very important. So that's the reason why I would say one should go for funding. And I'm not discounting the money part. That's also very important, but this is an additional bonus that you get as part of that, and which is very important for some, especially for me. Not go. Why not go for funding? If you can actually, if you have enough funds, or you have business model is such that it's funding itself, then you should question, do you need an external entity to interfere in your day-to-day running business? Now, as I said earlier, investors not only bring in money, but they bring in the domain knowledge, the contacts, and so many other things. And if they bring that and you value that, then yes, you should do it. So yeah, it depends on which stage you are in, how much fund actually you need, purely from the money stage sake. Then what other things they bring to the table other than the money.
Great. Excellent. Susan, since you talk about funding, when an investor invests into a company, how important is IP to the investor?
In my experience, very important. I have some clients who I would put in the startup category that have looked for funding and have been constantly told, not until your patent is granted. So they're not even satisfied with patent pending. They want it approved before they will even consider giving out funding. And I've seen that multiple times, which is unfortunate when it's a single person just trying to get started. One client is in the pharmaceutical realm and needs to go through the FDA to get approval for this product, and that's going to cost around $2 million. She just doesn't have it, and she's even looked for, woman-owned fund grants, etc. But it's still not until the patent's granted.
If we have to expedite a patent prosecution in the US, how much does it cost in the government fees, and in how much time can we have a patent grant in the US?
There are several options, starting with the special options. If one of the inventors, all it takes is one, is over the age of 65, you can file a petition to make special, and there's no government fee. It's based on life expectancy, unfortunately. They want you to have your patent before you pass. So that one's free. I have several inventors who've taken advantage of that. What it does is it places your patent application on the top of the stack at the examiner's desk. They have to pick it up more quickly, and a little bit shortened time frame between your response and their next communication. So it does indeed speed up the process. There's another petition to make special based on alleged infringement. If you believe that there's infringing activity going on, we can file a petition, and again, put you on the top of the stack at the examiner's desk. There's also one for being in a special technology area, like biofuels and a few other categories. Never filed one of those, pretty rare. The other route is to give the USPTO money. Expedited prosecution, we call it track one. The fee in the past has been substantial. It's about, I don't remember if it's small entity or large entity, $2,000 or $4,000 to pay the USPTO to go fast. They put you even faster than the petitions to make special. You get approved within 3 months or denied within 3 months, usually approved. It's not that difficult to get into the program. And what they guarantee you is that you will be to a final office action or a notice of allowance within 1 year. So you will have quickly received a first office action, had a chance to respond, tell the examiner why your claims are patentable, and then should at least have a second document from the examiner either approving the claims or giving you further reasons why they think your invention is not novel or it is obvious. So
excellent.
Those are the primary ways.
Yes. Two follow-up questions on this. You said if the inventor is above 65, is it applicable to a foreign inventor?
Yes, 65 or older, at the age of 65 or older. Mhm.
Yeah. To a foreign inventor, it's applicable. Second, you said that if you perceive in alleged infringement, now what do you have to prove that you perceive an alleged infringement?
That is interesting because I've never had a client want to file a petition for that particular reason. So I am not up on what you would have to show, but I imagine it would just be a declaration prepared by someone knowledgeable at the company, similar to what we file during prosecution. We file what's called a 1.312 declaration and affidavit, where you're stating facts. And so we would put in all the facts, and then it would be signed by someone of knowledge at the company. But I can verify that for sure,
Yes,
as a follow-up that I can give to you to send out.
yes, that will be great. That will be wonderful. Thank you very much. Jax, you took a bit of a while to start your own venture, if I can say so. I'm sure all of us have a lot of outgoings, and we always think whether it's the right time or not, should I leave my cushy job or not?
Yep.
And at some point in time, say, okay, enough is enough. What made you do that? So this question is actually not just for you, it's for people who are still thinking whether to leave this job or whether to not leave this job.
Right, right. I think that's a very interesting question. And I think, every entrepreneur who has actually taken the step, have their own perspective on this, right? See, for me, I can completely resonate with what Jesal said. For me, the opportunity to build something from the ground up and to actually have somebody, appreciate what you have created, right? How you have actually helped their life become easier. That is really something that drives me, right? And so while this is a full-time entrepreneur journey that I've started, last year, but I've had the bug, from a long time, right? And I have made my own little steps in terms of trying out to see whether it is ready, whether I'm ready or not, right? So I would say probably about 7 years back, I started a company or an idea that I had, and we sort of, we dug a little bit deeper into it. And then I realized that, there are some areas or some aspects that, or some aspects that there are gaps in my skill set, right? And that's when I decided to go to business school and kind of, round it up a little bit more. Now, you don't have to necessarily do that. You can also, come back and find new co-founders who can fill those gaps. But ultimately, in order to make the jump, right, it comes down to your the passion, right? Whether that passion is for startup, or whether the passion is for that particular problem, right? Because that passion gives you two things. One, it gives you conviction, and it gives you perseverance, which are extremely important. Because remember, when you start the company, the chances, I mean, if you look at the statistics, the chances of actually a success are very low. So people are always going to tell you, why are you leaving Google and starting this company? Where you can make lots of money and all that. So your passion gives you the conviction about the problem that you're taking up, that this is something that I know it's going to work, or I know it is important, right? So for me, even though I have tried in the past, right, I would say really the difference is that this time, I have that conviction, and I knew that this is the right time, because from a skill set standpoint, from my experience standpoint, I knew that I have a good team that I can then execute. I think that conviction that you need to have is very important, because from a logical sense, if you look at from an economic standpoint, or logical standpoint, statistical standpoint, it doesn't always look very rosy to actually make that jump, right? So yeah, I mean, that's what I would say.
Excellent, wonderful. That's a good piece of advice. Jesal, we understand you got a few minutes, and you hard stop in a few minutes. Before you leave us, please tell us one thing that a budding entrepreneur should have or should focus on while they venture into their new business. That one thing a person should be focusing on.
Product market fit would be the number one. I would say, especially the budding entrepreneurs who are not started the company. I think that's the first thing that they should be focusing on. Now there are some statistical models about the PMF as well, the product market fit as well. But even if you don't go that scientific, getting some anecdotal, some validation from various sources would be the most vital one, because product market fit is very, very different for each different kind of products. For a consumer B2C, could be first 1,000 customers, consumer to sign up can be, you can define that. For an enterprise customer, for a $10,000 ACV, you might have a different versus a $100,000 ACV. That's a different product market fit definition. So that definition may vary, but you need to have the definition, and hitting that first is going to be the crucial one. Leave everything aside, just go after that. And as I think to what Jack's saying, I think Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn says that if you haven't, if your first version of the product has not embarrassed you enough, you have released a product too late. You've got to release it fast, even if it embarrasses you, and you've got to support that. And that's, you should be ready for that.
Absolutely. I think one thing is that perfection should not be an enemy of progress. We keep on perfecting things and we delaying the progress. I think that is one good takeaway. Product market fit should be your primary focus. That's good advice. Thank you so much.
So Amit, on that token, I'm sorry, I have to jump off. I have a customer call in 3 minutes. I got to for a couple of minutes. So it was a privilege to have you guys. Thank you, Susan, Jags. Nice talking to you guys as well.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
We'll continue with Jags and Susan for next 10 minutes. Jags, one question to you. When you were filing patent applications before in the previous organization, what was your primary objective as a person who is inventing while you were filing the patent application? Why were you filing patent applications or patents?
Right. I think most of the time it is for defensibility. We've had cases where we've decided that those are trade secrets and we have not filed any patents, right? But I think, if you're looking at as an inventor or as a leader from a business standpoint, right, you're looking at it more from a perspective of defensibility. If it goes out, right, can someone copy it, or how can you make sure that nobody else infringes on the technology technology that you've invented, right? So our core focus is in making sure that you're able to defend all the aspects of the idea or the invention, so that you can make sure that nobody else can infringe on it. So it's really that defensibility that we focus on, in making sure that it is broad enough, at the same time, specific to be able to, grant the patent, right? And of course, that's where the patent lawyers like you and Susan, come in and help us with regards to the claims and how to word them, and because it is an art. I gotta say that it is not like just writing an article.
Yeah, sure. What the irony is, Jags, while you guys are filing patent applications, inventors are filing patents because they, for defensibility purpose, they don't want people to infringe or copy you. While that is your perspective, when the invention comes to a patent attorney, you know what? How we draft a claim? We draft a claim so that we can capture as many people as possible, so that we draft a claim in a manner that as many people should infringe as possible. I'm sure Susan can validate that. We write the claim so broad that we will try to cover the whole world should infringe the same patent. That's a different perspective. But one more thing, Jags, did the idea of raising capital, raising funds, was also an objective for filing patents?
See, I think, when you have a tech or, deep tech based company, I'm not talking about, companies like Facebook or WhatsApp, because they have a different model, right? It's more business model driven companies. But if you have a tech driven company, your ability to protect your invention and ability to actually use that to generate revenue is extremely important from an investor standpoint, right? So, that is one of the fundamental things that that investors look at. Definitely from a seed round perspective, they do look at, whether you have IP or not. But, when you go to Series A, I don't think, if you are a tech company, you don't actually have patents from a Series A. It's unheard of to actually get funding at a Series A round if you don't have any patents and you are a tech company. So yes, having patents is absolutely important, at least provisionals, right? If not patents, provisionals is extremely important when you are going and raising funds for a tech company.
Excellent. That's a great piece of advice. I think in India, unfortunately, people are still learning. We have to really convince our clients to file patents or why they're important. Fortunately, a lot of investors who are now investing in India and in companies in India, they're not asking for a patent grant as they are asking for a patent grant in the US. Even if you file a patent, a pending patent makes them happy, makes the investors happy.
Right.
So they're progressing, we're progressing, catching up.
Yeah.
Susan, why should somebody or a startup, why should they not file patents?
Not file a patent. Wow. I like them to file patents. That's a tough one. If they have something that could be protected by a trade secret, or they have software which is protected by copyright, then they have that kind of protection rather than patent protection. There's multiple aspects to intellectual property: trademarks, trade dress, trade secrets, copyrights, patents. Those are your 5 primary aspects. So if you can do it under the other types of intellectual property without a patent, that can be done. It really is going to depend upon what your product is, what technology area are you in, what are you going to sell, and is it appropriate to protect it by those other avenues? There are many products that are successful because of the way they look and their trademark. Take the Pringles, if you're familiar with Pringles chips, the red can is their traditional can. That red color is their trade dress. And it's a food product, so you can't patent a food product because that's a recipe. Recipes can only be protected if they're in a compilation and end up in a cookbook, and then it would be a copyright. So there's lots of different ways to protect products. It's not always a patent. So you just have to evaluate where you fall.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Susan. I know that was a difficult question for you. It will be difficult for me as well, but thank you. You answered it pretty well. Okay, so Jax, you currently are developing solution for plants, for industries where you're able to automate things and maybe with sensors and all of that, able to get data using IoT, and you put the data on the cloud. You started this company 1 year back, and I'm sure you saw it somewhere that this was needed, but then it was not there at that point. But in Singapore, this idea is being implemented from at least last 5 years. One of my clients came to me 5 years back. He was from Singapore and he wanted to implement this. He wanted to implement this technology where he could make the machines talk, where he can connect all the machines and the one input goes to another and other goes to another, output goes to another. He was able to make machines talk.
Right.
So I'm sure you're aware. So
Right.
why would you, if something is happening in a particular space, if some technology is already there and you also want to venture into the technology because perhaps the market size is too big, perhaps you think that the cake is too big and I can get my share.
Right.
What was your take before you ventured into this business?
Yeah, so when I think connecting it back to when should somebody start the business, start a company, right? When I talked about conviction, that conviction, it's good to have conviction or positivity, but you need to validate it, right? And the validation comes from talking to customers. Now, fortunately for me, I worked in analytics space, I worked with, wide range of industries before, spending a lot of time in the commercial side. So before starting this company for 7-8 years, I was with GE, where I managed, solutions both with smart instruments as well as, predictive maintenance software solutions. So during that time, I've had the experience or exposure to these process and manufacturing industries. Now, specifically 2 years before starting at Time AI, I was in charge of building a next generation predictive maintenance software for GE, during which I worked with companies like BP, Chevron, Exxon, Dow Chemicals, Sabic, and many others. So although the market is very broad, you have to look at, where the market is and what is that unsolved problem, right? Where is that gap that, that you can actually solve and which is important enough for the customers, right? And so if you come from the industry, sometimes, you do have those additional insight available for you based on your experience. And so for me, like you said, right, there are lots of solutions because, industries, manufacturing industries have been there in the since, ever, right? The main challenge today that what we are solving, what has not been solved is many of the solutions today are symptom finders, right? So for example, if I take an analogy between, a plant health and a human health, right? So what you have today in the plants or solutions that are available in the market are like thermometers. You can find that a person has a fever, which indicates that there's a problem, right? But then you still have to go to the doctor, and the doctor orders, 10 other tests, and then he puts all of those tests together to then say, yes, this person has, maybe flu or maybe, malaria or something else, right? So what we are doing is we are taking the solutions from just being a symptom finder to essentially a full diagnosis and a recommendation step. So that is one aspect of it. The other part is, remember when I talked to you about the doctors, right? In the case of human health case, the doctors are, it's a booming professional. Profession doctors, right? There are plenty of them. But if you come to industries, right, the doctors for the plants are these veteran experts who have been in the industry for 30, 40 years. And those are the ones who analyze these problems. When they find a symptom, they analyze and they identify, what should be the mitigation step. Now, these people are retiring pretty fast. So what we are doing, the industry is really struggling in terms of, how do you go from the symptom to understanding that this is the problem and how this should be addressed, right? And remember, even if you have an expert, right, who has 30, 40 years of experience, they cannot scale to the billions of sensors or billions of data points that are, in a typical plant. You can have up to 1 million sensors, and they're churning out data, every second, every minute, right? There's no way that a person can scale to that level. So what we are doing is, our USP is a virtual expert in a box. So what we're solving is, providing those doctors who can learn and explain, because that's what AI is about, the ability to provide that human-like, understanding and explainability, but at the same time, couple that with the power to scale to the full plant, with powerful computing. And that's why, today, even though we're a younger company, we're able to work with customers who already have solutions, whether it is, from large companies, right? And they're still working with us for that reason. So coming back to your question, you have to, when you look at it from a high level, there will always be solutions, in the market, in the space, right? What you have to look at is, where the other solutions are, where the gaps are, and whether that gap is significant enough to and worthy enough to actually start a company and go after it. So for me, luckily, because of my past experience and my exposure to analytics, that's what enabled me to get those insights and then essentially start this company.
Very nice, excellent. That's a great piece of advice, Jags. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. This is the last round. In the last round, if you, Jags, you have a question to Susan, or Susan has a question to you, please go ahead and shoot.
Well, I did think of another answer to your last question, Amit, which is why you wouldn't file a patent. And one would be if the overall net sales on an annual basis wouldn't justify the cost. So if you've got a product and you're only going to make a couple $100s a year selling a handful to select customers, then the market's just not big enough to support the expense. A second one is if the product has a very short life cycle. So these products phase in and phase out with new variations very quickly. The product that comes to mind are razors for shaving. They tend to evolve so quickly, and when patents last for 20 years and your product changes every 2, then the expense isn't justified. So there you go.
Excellent. That's a nice top up. A nice top up. Yep. Excellent. Yeah, Jack.
So, yeah, I can throw in a question. I think this would be helpful. So one of the questions that a lot of inventors have when it comes to patents is, they're deep into the technology or they're deep into the problem space or the market space. So, the question that oftentimes inventors have is, how do I know that the patent attorney, the patent firm can understand and can actually write the patent in a way that is specific to the invention and that covers aspects, right? So I throw it out to you both. I mean, I think Amit deserves a question too.
Well, Amit, you can go first.
Can I? Okay, all right. That's a great question. I think that apprehension is generally with a lot of inventors. So that's why all of us, for example, let's say I specialize in electronics and telecommunication and software. There are a bunch of people in my team who would focus on MSc or chemistry or let's say pharmaceutical or mechanical. So one person does not do all. So depending upon technology area, we put the right person in place so that he can understand the technology and can do justice to the invention. Because it's their baby. The invention is the inventor's baby, and they don't want to give it to somebody who doesn't understand technology, doesn't understand the baby. So the right person has to come in and fit in. Susan, what do you say?
Absolutely. Fisher Broyles in particular pushes us to stay in our technology field. We have a deep team. We have over 270 partners, and about half of those are in the IP group. We've got 60 to 70 patent attorneys. Big software group out in Seattle, and then we're spread all over. But that is the mission we're on. Stay in your technology field. We have a large group. Whoever it fits based on their past experience and their education, that's who should write that patent application. And we have a model that encourages sharing the work. Everybody's rewarded for doing the work, and it just makes sense to put it to the person who's the right fit for the particular product.
Absolutely. And just by the first few questions that the patent attorney is going to ask you, you will know whether this guy understands my invention or not. The first 2 questions will tell you, okay, this guy is a misfit or is a fit. Inventors are smart; they understand.
Yeah. Well, and I've also taken the aspect that usually the patent attorney is smart as well, and I use the inventor to be my teacher, educate me, teach me what I need to know, but I have to know what questions to ask to get that information.
I agree.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Amit, did you see the question in the chat?
All right. We have a question. Once we're passionate, we often share our business ideas with our friends and family. Shall we continue to do that? Do we have to be cautious? So they might be okay. To what extent do we share the inventions with finances, considering that they may have not the end of the finance? Okay. Both the questions are, I think, for both of you as well. They're saying that should you be sharing your ideas with people, your friends and families? I would say strictly no. You would not know from where it can leak. Second question was, when you are reaching out to an investor, and you have not filed a patent, what can you do? Susan?
Definitely a non-disclosure agreement, also called a confidentiality agreement. where the person you're talking to about financing understands that the invention has to be kept secret. That'll have a certain time period of duration for the secrecy, and it should give you the ability to then file your patent application. Confidentiality agreements show that it's not a public disclosure. Public disclosures are what you have to be concerned about, because they will trigger in the US the starting of a 1-year time clock by which you must file a patent application. If you haven't filed within that 1 year, you are time barred from ever filing an application to that invention. That's the US's policy. Now, some countries are even stricter. Europe in particular, if you have a public disclosure of the invention, it can bar you from filing at all. Now, we have to evaluate how much did you really disclose? Did you disclose the whole invention? Did you disclose it on a high level of just the concept? And so that's where the lawyers come in to say, well, yeah, you're okay. Once we write the application and claim all the details, we can still go into Europe. But again, it's just going to depend how much you disclose. So the best policy is to always have a confidentiality agreement in place with someone you're talking to, especially if it's before filing a patent application. Otherwise, I would caution you and say, let's wait a couple weeks, get the application filed, then go talk to him.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, absolutely correct. Thank you. It was a fabulous discussion. Really appreciate your time, guys. Really appreciate your thoughts, inputs, advice. People would need it, especially in these times. We will be disseminating this webinar on different channels, and we'll also give you a copy of YouTube link. Please feel free to share with your network. Once again, thank you so much. Have a fantastic week and take care of yourself.
Thanks,
Thank
Amit.
you for organizing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Nice talking to you all.
Yes, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.